Our topic today is adding users to pipeline without giving them access. So first, let's chat about just applications for that. When would you want to actually do that? There are a few potential scenarios. It could be that you're onboarding new users as time goes on, just one at a time, or you could just be setting them all up and want to get them into the system, regardless of whether it's a single person or you're doing them all just now. You want to get them into the system, but not have access just yet as you're still setting them up, okay? So that's the first scenario. Or it could be that your workflow facilitates that you will never be having them get into the system, right? You want them to be in there so you can add them to transactions, et cetera, but you don't have any intentions of ever allowing your agents to get into the system, which can certainly be the case. We definitely have some offices that do that. Obviously, there's huge benefit that most of our offices have from allowing the agents to get in there. That's why part of the reason why they want pipeline. But again, definitely those scenarios where you don't want the agents to have access. Really, one of the frequent reasons that we see that is for TCs, right? Independent TCs or TC offices that want to manage their agents' transactions, but not allow them to get in. Okay, but again, those other applications are completely relevant as well. Alrighty, or it could just be part of your standard workflow that you don't allow the agents into the system. Alrighty, so those are applications for it. So the benefits that you get from putting actual agents into there, I'll sort of tell you that from the perspective of what we see people doing to get around that. Often we'll see, and advise against, but we'll see where an admin is adding either themselves to the transaction, right? To make sure that the system detects which side they've got. They'll add themselves, let's say, to the listing side. And then maybe add the agent as a contact. That way they can still easily communicate with that agent. But when you do that, it's got a few different drawbacks versus if you add the agent directly to the transaction. Obviously, you get the benefit of it being more accurate. You're adding them directly to the transaction. That means you can run reports for that agent. You can attribute commissions to them, et cetera, right? So again, much more accurate. It also allows you to properly set the agents up to be on the correct transactions in the event that you decide to allow them to be in the system later, right? So getting that all set up up front. And then also it allows you to add notes to the user profile. A moment ago, I told you sometimes people will try to add them as a contact, but notes don't transfer over across transactions when you put them into a contact. But if you create a separate user under manage users, you can add user-specific notes in that user's profile, okay? So it keeps it nice and clean. All righty, so those are the benefits. So let's go ahead and dive into pipeline and set someone up so we can see how to do that, okay? So obviously we'd start over in manage users. So let's head on over there, admin settings, and then manage users. And let's go ahead and add a new user, one that we're not intending to have access to the system. So let's say this person's name is Janet Smith. And I'll name her, okay, so there are a few things that you want to do when you're setting them up, okay? The first is to be sure to not use their real email address, right? You don't want them getting communications from the system. You don't want them to be able to come and be able to log in by requesting their password, et cetera. So you want to use a not real email address. So you've got a couple of options here. You can either append something to their real email address. So let's say her real email address is janet@abcrealty.com, something like that, right? You can use whatever standard method you want, but one that we recommend is something like appending a letter to the beginning. So maybe Z-. So for anyone that you're not going to want to have access to the system, you could add that to the beginning of their email address. Okay, and again, whatever naming convention you want to use is perfectly fine. The main point is that if someone sends something to this email address, clearly it's not real and it's not going to go anywhere, or it's going to bounce. Okay, so that's the first method. You may also want to, if you saw our webinar 2 weeks ago, I think, about using email aliases, you can create an email alias on the fly based on your own email address if you use a system that supports that. So for mine, for example, I could use, right? And I could do it something like that. So, and this is a way to create an alias. Again, if you're not familiar with that, you can check out that previous webinar and see how you can easily, again, on the fly, create email aliases like that. The benefit of using my email alias is that if I inadvertently or accidentally send something to this agent, it'll come to me and I can see it and know, that I made that error. Okay. All right, or if I forget to turn off some notification, etc., then I can get that to my mailbox and see that nice and cleanly. Okay, so then of course I continue with the rest of this information. Actually, I'm going to do that because we're going to use that as an example later. Right, it's an agent. And typically, I don't think I've seen any other scenario. I'm sure there's some, but typically when you're adding users that you don't want to have access to the system, it's typically agents, right? And give them a temporary password. And the second thing I want to do is to uncheck down here, send this user a welcome message. Okay, don't want to do that, obviously, because that's not a real email address. And really at this point, these are just fail safes. I've already got the email address set up so that they're not going to receive anything, but we might as well turn off everything so it's not having these messages bounce all over the place. So turn off send this user welcome message. And then you want to turn off any communications that would go to the agent. Okay, the first one is send daily email with upcoming tasks to this user. Okay, so you want to turn that off. You don't want those daily reminders going to them. And then there's two other notification areas you want to turn off, but they're in other places. So that's it for this setup here. Okay. Obviously, I don't need to give them any permissions because they're not going to be able to do anything in here. And I can go ahead and add this user. So that's it for manage users here. So now I've got Janet Smith. I've turned off her daily reminder emails and I turned off the send welcome email. There are two other places I need to turn off. The first is to go to my company settings. And there's an option here to email agents when admin comments on documents. Okay, I want to turn that off because every time I, as an admin, make a comment on a document, make a dot comment, those are those little blue. Let me go show you real quickly. The little blue comments here, right? Whenever I make a dot comment, it automatically sends that comment to the agent on the transaction. So I want to turn those off so that as I'm adding my users that don't want to have access to the system, don't want to get those emails, then I need to turn that off at the global level here. Okay, so again, uncheck that, save it. Okay, and then one last area, and that is to log in as the user, right? And I've got a login in a separate window over here. Log in as a user, go to their personal profile, and make sure that you've unchecked receive monthly production summary email. Okay, you don't want them getting that. And then save that. Now, if you've got several agents that you're doing, like you're doing all of your agents at setup time, and you don't want to log into each of those, just let us know. We can possibly do that in batch if there's enough of them. Alrighty. Okay, so that's setting them up. And then operationally, it's sort of business as usual. Let's head over to a transaction here to actually utilize that. So now if I'm on a transaction, and let's say I'm either creating a transaction, or in this case, I'm just going to edit it. So just for ease, and I'm coming down here and I'm adding my agent. I'm going to look for Janet. Right, there she is. And then I add her as an agent, the same as I would any other agent or any other person on the transaction. So now that's an agent on the transaction. Now, if I want to send them a message, normally I would just specify them, right? I can click them there. I could even potentially drag the agent to my message area, which is to my external email addresses area, and mail them that way. But I'm not going to do that because this is actually just going to come to me. If I really truly want to mail them, I would need to add them as a contact. So here I would go ahead and add, say, listing agent. Excellent, right there, right? And then I would add, I'm just going to add her here, add her email address, her real email address, at ABC Realty. Actually, I'm going to put Paperless Pipeline because I don't want that going anywhere, but normally I'd put her real email address, right? And her phone number, etc. Add that contact. And now when I really want to message her, I would go ahead and drag her to that external email address area. Okay, so that's the only caveat. Well, not the caveat, that's what you want. You only want to be able to email them when you explicitly say that this is the person that I want to email directly. Otherwise, you don't want them getting those automatic system emails or welcome emails, etc. You turn those off. Alrighty. And so that's it. It's mostly on the setup side. Once you set them up, again, it's just treating them as a normal agent, but emailing them specifically whenever you need to actually email them using the contact method.